All right, hello. So I'm going to show you how to configure the drivers for the Chip Whisperer. So the Chip Whisperer box here, we have on the side of it a mini USB plug right there. So basically all you do is you take your mini USB cable and plug it in, and Windows should pop up your driver installation window. As a note, when you plug this in, none of these LEDs actually come on. These LEDs are only on once you load the FPGA code, which will require all the drivers and the Chip Whisperer software to be running. The only LED that would come on with just power is LED 1 here. So just so you're aware that if you plug it in and you don't see life, that's fine. So let me turn the camera off here and go ahead and plug this into Windows. So here we go. So it gives you some blah blah blah. No driver found. So somewhere you've just got to basically force it to say, hey, I've got drivers that I want you to have. So I believe you can open the device manager maybe. So here we have an unknown device in the device manager, and we will say update driver software, browse my computer. So where I'm going to go is that Chip Whisperer directory. So when I set up the software, I downloaded a release which had Chip Whisperer, so the release candidate 2. The drivers are specifically in hardware, capture, Chip Whisperer Rev 2, and there should be a subfolder called libusb-win32. If you search anywhere, if you select anywhere in Chip Whisperer, it should search to find the right ones anyway, because it's searching in subfolders, so make sure you have include subfolders. But in the future, there may be other drivers included with the Chip Whisperer release, so it might just be easier. So Windows complains that it can't verify the publisher, so we just hit install anyway. And wait a little bit. There we go. Success. So now we have in the device manager a very nice device coming up. This FX2, Easy USB FX2, that's the microcontroller. So what do we do now? Now I need to run the Chip Whisperer capture software. Some notes. As a note, you could have originally, if everything was already set up, you can just run an example script. We need to do one more thing. We need to configure the Chip Whisperer firmwares. So it asks you for a bunch of locations. These may or may not be pre-populated, depending if it could find them okay. In this case, it didn't, so the first thing it asks for is FW loader, so you just hit find, and it defaults to the capture directory you're in. So basically we've got to go up 1, 2, 3, so we're in the main Chip Whisperer folder. I now go to hardware, capture, Chip Whisperer Rev 2, Easy USB firmware, ztext-sdk, FW loader, FW loader.jar, so it tells you that's what it's looking for. You only have to do this the first time, so we do the same thing. We go back 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops. Oh, it remembered where we were, which would have been easier anyway. So Chip Whisperer Rev 2 folder. There's a folder called HDL. Then there's the ztext Rev 2 1.11c ISE. And finally, interface.bit. Again, if these were pre-populated, you don't need to do that. This is just if it didn't find them. Alright, so finally we need the iHex file to load in. So we go back a few. What the directory we want to look for is called EasyUSB-firmware. And just keep going down directories until we get to, I believe it's in examples, USB-FPGA-1.11, 1.11c, OpenADC, OpenADC.ix. All right, so once you've set these all up, you should be able to go Tools, Download ChipWhisperer Firmware. If this works, you'll see a note in the debug logging explaining it works. If it doesn't work, you have to look here. So it opened a Python window, and it didn't like something. So the system cannot find the file specified. So for some reason, it hasn't run the firmware loader. So now we have to, I believe, this is a default install of Windows with nothing loaded, and the firmware loader actually runs on Java, and this machine does not have Java installed. So before this will work, we'll now have to install the Java runtime environment. It's fairly likely, I think, that most people actually already have this. Download Java for Windows. So, yes. All right. So, we'll make sure it wasn't trying to install anything crazy. And presumably that was it. Here we go. Do not install any of this crap. Oh, it still hasn't installed. My mistake. So once Java is installed, now the firmware loader should work. So you may not need this in the future. Actually, you can check the release information. I plan on integrating this into the Python application, but for now, you need Java to run the firmware loader. Oops. So there we go. Java is installed. And you can check it worked. Okay, whatever. We don't really care. What we care about is ChipWhisperer. So you no longer, as I said before, it realizes what these are and keeps them. So you don't need to set those up again. You just can run download. And if it works, what you'll actually see is that the drivers will change because it switches some stuff around. So the very first time it may prompt you for new drivers. If that happens, just point it back to where you had originally. Anyway, it's loaded the FPGA and the firmware. If we want to test it, we can hit the scope type to ChipWhisperer /OpenADC, and under scope settings we have ChipWhisperer Rev 2 selected, so you have to make sure of that. And just hit connect. So OpenADC found, connecting. So things more or less worked. There's some other error. This is a release candidate I'm using, so you shouldn't see these. But anyway, it was able to connect and download some information from it. So that shows you that you now have communication to the ChipWhisperer, and you'll get like the version information will come across the wire. All right, so you can, now that you have this working, there'll be other videos that show you the actual example.